He was at my door again, holding a wrench and that same practiced smile. "Pipe under the sink acting up again?" he asked, pretending to be casual. That was his line every time. The first few visits, I believed him, or maybe I wanted to. But by the seventh, when he showed up without me asking, carrying tools he didn't need, the truth began to hum beneath the small talk like a wire sparking behind a wall. That hum grew louder every time I saw his wife's car in their driveway, the same silver SUV parked perfectly parallel to the hedge separating our yards. She and I used to share coffee in the mornings, gossiping about neighbors, about recipes, about everything but the one thing that was now unavoidable. Her name was Jocelyn Hale. His name was Patrick. And mine, the one that would end this quiet charade, is Nora Vance. The Hales moved into the cul-de-sac 2 years ago, the kind of picture-perfect couple that could have been on a home renovation show. Jocelyn was elegant in that curated way, manicured hands, expensive loungewear, and the ability to make hosting look effortless. Patrick, on the other hand, was all charm and sawdust, a contractor who loved reminding everyone how handy he was. He built things, fixed things, smiled easily. For a while, they were the heartbeat of the neighborhood, barbecue hosts, holiday organizers, the couple everyone admired. And I'll admit it, I admired them too. When you live alone, admiration can quickly become a kind of longing. So, when Patrick offered to help with repairs after my divorce, small things like loose cabinets or a broken fence latch, I didn't see the danger. Not at first. He was just being neighborly. Until one afternoon, he wasn't. It was early spring, warm light, open windows, the scent of wet grass drifting through the air. Patrick was crouched under my sink, sleeves rolled up, forearms glistening. He was talking about water pressure, or pretending to, when he glanced up and said, "You know, Jocelyn's been spending more time with her book club lately. Keeps her busy." It sounded harmless, but the tone, the lazy, testing tone, carried a weight. I smiled politely, ignoring it, but then his hand brushed mine when he passed the wrench. A deliberate graze, light as static. It lasted less than a second, but it was enough to shift the air between us. I told myself I imagined it, that loneliness was making me read into things. But then it happened again, and again. Each visit came with a longer pause, a slightly bolder compliment, a comment about how peaceful my house felt. By summer, I'd stopped letting him in unless something truly needed fixing. He noticed the distance. He always did. So he started texting. It began innocently. "Hey, just checking if the fence held up after the storm." Then, "You shouldn't have to deal with that alone. I can swing by tonight if you want." Then, "You looked beautiful at Jocelyn's dinner party. She doesn't notice things like that, but I do." I should have blocked him, but I didn't, because beneath the disgust was curiosity. The kind that tempts you to see how far someone will go before they catch themselves. But Patrick never caught himself. He fell headfirst. And when he started sending photos, nothing explicit, just shirtless, casual selfies meant to look accidental, the disgust won. I knew then that this wasn't just a man being reckless. It was a man who believed he was untouchable. I could have told Jocelyn right away, could have handed her the phone, let her see what kind of man she'd married. But that would have made me the villain too, the woman tempting a husband, the inevitable scapegoat. So I waited, and I watched. Jocelyn was still my morning coffee companion, still smiling as if her world was perfect. But every now and then, when Patrick's name came up, there was a flicker, the tiniest crack in her composure. She wasn't stupid. She just wasn't ready to know. So I decided to help her get there. The opportunity came during a neighborhood fundraiser. Jocelyn and Patrick were hosting, of course. Their house was a showcase that night. Candles, jazz music, the smell of rosemary chicken drifting through the open patio doors. Patrick was performing his usual role, laughing too loudly, hand on Jocelyn's back, just a moment too long to look natural. But his eyes kept finding me. He smiled, that secret, coded smile, and raised his glass across the room. I smiled back. It wasn't a signal of invitation. It was a countdown. The next morning, I texted Jocelyn, "Hey, are you free tonight? There's something I'd like to talk about, and I could use a friend's advice." She replied almost instantly, "Of course, 7 p.m., I'll bring wine." Perfect. That afternoon, I scrolled through Patrick's messages again, every word, every line of false affection, and forwarded them to myself. Then I printed them. Not the explicit ones, just the clever ones, the ones that would sting most because of their plausibility. "You're different from her, Nora. You actually see me. I wish I'd met you before I made so many mistakes. Sometimes I come over just to feel alive again." They were small, quiet betrayals, the kind that whispered louder than shouting ever could. When Jocelyn arrived that evening, the air smelled of lilacs and confrontation. She wore her usual calm, silk blouse, neat hair, but her smile was tight, uncertain. "I hope this isn't about that property tax letter," she said, setting the wine on my counter. "I can't deal with one more neighborhood complaint tonight." "It's not," I said softly. "It's about Patrick." The way her expression froze, a flicker of dread under control, told me she'd already suspected. "What about him?" I gestured toward the table. "Why don't you thank him personally?" She frowned. "Thank him?" I slid my phone across to her. The message thread glowed between us like an open wound. Her fingers trembled as she scrolled. Once, twice, then she stopped. She didn't cry, didn't speak. She just looked up at me with that same polite smile she wore at every brunch, except now it was empty. Then she whispered, "He said you needed help with your fence." "I did," I said, "and apparently so did he." She stayed for nearly 2 hours. At first, she defended him, said he'd been distracted, lonely, under pressure. Then she stopped trying. Because with every scroll, the truth was unavoidable. He hadn't stumbled into temptation. He'd constructed it, word by word. When she finally left, she took the printed messages with her, folded neatly like documents she planned to file away rather than burn. The next morning, their silver SUV was gone. Days passed, then weeks. I didn't see Patrick again, but I heard. The neighborhood has its own circulatory system, gossip as bloodstream. He'd moved out, apparently taking time to think. Jocelyn stayed. She repainted the house, changed the locks. One afternoon, I saw her on her porch, pruning her roses with slow precision. She saw me too. For a moment, I expected awkwardness, avoidance, resentment. Instead, she smiled. Not the polite kind this time, the real kind. The kind that said, "Thank you for telling me what I already knew but couldn't admit." I raised my mug in salute. She raised her shears. Balance restored. You might think that's where the story ends, but endings are rarely that clean. A few months later, I received a text. "You shouldn't have told her. You ruined everything." No name, just anger. I replied only once. "No, Patrick, you did." And then I blocked him. But that wasn't the final act. The final act came quietly, the way real closure always does. That winter, Jocelyn invited me over for tea. The house felt different, lighter, quieter, her. She'd replaced the heavy furniture Patrick loved with soft colors, scattered art prints, fresh plants. As we sipped chamomile, she said, "You know, for years, I thought I needed him to keep this house together. Turns out, he was the thing that kept breaking it." I smiled. "Funny how that works." She hesitated, then added, "Do you ever feel guilty?" "For what?" "For being the messenger," she said. "For breaking the illusion." I thought about that for a moment, about all the ways we protect lies because they're comfortable, familiar, easy to live beside. Then I said, "No, sometimes the truth doesn't destroy, it disinfects." She exhaled, slow and steady. "I like that." Later that night, as I walked home under the flickering street lamps, the air cold and sharp, I thought about how strange it is, the intimacy of betrayal, how two people can live side by side, sharing walls, sharing gossip, while a third thread hums beneath it all, invisible until it snaps, and how satisfying it is not to snap back, but to let the silence do the talking. I didn't ruin anything. I simply turned on the light. And in the harsh clarity of it, Patrick's reflection finally vanished, leaving behind two women who would never again confuse kindness with blindness. Sometimes, when the neighborhood feels too still, I'll catch the sound of Jocelyn laughing with her new friends on the porch, and I'll think about the lesson buried beneath the mess. Some truths don't need to shout, they just need to be seen. And some revenge isn't about punishment, it's about revelation.
You've just stepped into her revenge side, where every wound finds its justice, and every silence ends with truth. If her story struck a chord, make sure to like, share, and subscribe. Your support keeps these stories alive. Another secret waits in the next video. See how her revenge begins.